not only to this webinar, but to the conference that Harmony and a bunch of other people who are co-sponsoring will be putting on in June. I think it's not only a timely conference, but also a very, very important one. You know, we all, probably everybody on this call and throughout the field, talk about just how important it is to provide post-adoption services, and we don't mean just post-adoption services, but it's been over a decade since there was even a conference of this sort, since there was a conference. I'm setting up here as everyone can see while I'm talking. Since there's been a conference on a subject that we all agree is so important, well, it's about time we started figuring out what we do about all of this, and that's what we're going to talk about during the webinar today, very much so, and that's certainly what the conference is all about. So let me start by introducing NCAP just a little bit, the National Center on Adoption and Permanency, which I started along with Carol Biddle, and here I can keep going. Here, let me do this one first, along with about 24 other really, really seasoned expert professionals in the field, because it is time for us to look at what we abbreviate as post-adoption services, ASAP, Adoption Support and Preservation. It is time to put them front and center. We all agree on that. This is an organization that is now committed to changing policy and practice in the United States, in shorthand, moving it from where we have historically been, which is child placement. That's what the field is all about, whether it's family reunification or adoption or another form of permanency, guardianship, kinship. We are talking about the metrics. The way we think about it is child placement, and we have to get past that. And this presentation that I'm going to give you today is very much about how we got here and why we need to get past that, why we need to move to a model that is about helping families succeed. That's the mission of the National Center on Adoption and Permanency, and I think I haven't run into a whole lot of people who think it's a bad idea. Wish us well, support us. We will be working on this. Will be, you know, my last career with some wonderful colleagues. So let me just jump back for a moment, and I do want to thank all the sponsors, but especially the state of Tennessee and Harmony for sponsoring this conference. It's important. I do hope that as many of you can go as possible. Spread the word to colleagues. We have to change the conversation. We have to get a drumbeat going, or nothing is going to change. The information in front of you, the slide in front of you, gives you some places to call or write for more information, to become a sponsor, whatever. So please do take note of that. Let me also say that I will give this entire presentation to the folks at Harmony, to Nicole, and so anybody who wants it, you don't have to take notes. It will all be here. You can send an email to Nicole at the email address you see, or to me, which is fine, and here I am at Pertman@ncapus.org, and we'll be happy to send you a copy of the PowerPoint. As for the PowerPoint, let me say that I will not get through all the slides, so I do want you to have it. So it can be a cheat sheet, it can give you background, you can use it. The idea is that there are more slides. In putting it together, I know there are more slides that I'm going to get through. I'm going to breeze through some of them. I'm going to focus on others to make the points that I want to make, but I want you to have them all. So please feel free to ask for them when this is all over. So this is just, I'll leave this up for a second while I start this off with just a tiny little joke, just for fun. And what's great is I will have no clue if anybody thinks this is funny, but I'll make it short. And it has a point. It always should have a point. So a mom, could be a dad, takes her son, could be a daughter, a non-gender specific joke. A mom takes her son to his first football game and afterwards says, "What did you think? How'd you like it?" And the kid says, "I loved it. I loved when they ran all over the field and they jumped on top of each other and they threw the ball around. It was so cool, but why all that fuss about 25 cents? And the mom says, "What are you talking about?" And the kid says, "You know, at the beginning they threw a coin up in the air, and the whole time after that it's get the quarterback, get the quarterback." Okay, a moment of silence for laughter. And the point is, and there is a point, that if no one explains the rules, if no one tells you who the players are, what they're supposed to be doing, how it's supposed to work, you can't understand what's happening in front of your very eyes. That is what we did in the realms of adoption, foster care, etc. for generations. And then we expected and wanted people to really get it. And we wanted the laws and policies and practices to be really good. Well, we did. Secrecy, shame, stigma, all those things surrounded us. So we didn't explain to people what was happening in front of their very eyes. And I would put it to you that most people, especially in the policy realm, don't know what's happening in our world very well today. They don't know what's happening in front of their eyes. And the consequence is that we have retained a model, child placement, yay, we did it, we put another kid in the family, that's great. It's good, it's very good, it's the precursor. But if we don't help that family, if that child has serious issues, if that family has special needs they can't meet, have we done our job? And I suggest that we haven't. And that's what this is going to be about. So almost no matter what my presentation, what I'm talking about, I start with this because we have to know who we're doing what we do for, if that's a sentence. Alex Haley wrote in Roots, I won't read it to you, basically that everybody wants to know who they are and where they come from. And I think as we proceed to help families succeed, or whether we're placing children, whatever we are doing, we have to remember that it really is about that child and that child who grows up and becomes an adult and making them feel whole. And that's the lecture. Okay. So if the notion is that we really don't know that much about what's happening in front of our eyes, one way I use to illustrate this, and nobody will get graded, is just to throw out some fairly basic information about, facts about adoption, just using that as a model, just to demonstrate what we know or don't know as a starting point. Do we know what's happening in front of our very eyes? So I'm going to ask everybody, you will not get graded, and you can't all say B for every answer because you don't know. Everybody please answer this. I'll give it like 15 seconds. I'm launching this poll. If I know what I'm doing, it's launched. So everybody gets to choose in each of these questions. So first, how many children are adopted in or into the U.S.? That includes step-parent adoptions, foster care adoptions, all sorts of adoptions, every sort of adoption. How many and adoptions from other countries? So about how many adoptions are there per year? So for A, well, you're all going at it. So the three categories, which occurs most, and what I mean by the third, how many people have adoption in their immediate family, is we tend to think of adoption as parent-child. You know, the kid got adopted and now he's with his mom. Well, the child has siblings, mom has siblings, there are grandparents, child grows up, has grandchildren, aunts, uncles. So I'm talking about that, you know, not extended family, but up to before first cousin. Okay? So how many, how many people in the U.S. have adoption in their immediate family? Because this question is to suggest that the people affected by what we do is a much, much larger group than we tend to think of. You know, the little niche in society that we represent. Well, guess what? All these numbers are really big, whichever one you think it is. Okay? So let's give it a few more seconds. If people could, okay, so it looks like, where is the answer on the first question? How many children, A, B, or C? I'm not sure I know how to do this. Could one of the moderators please tell me what it can jump on and tell me? I see that most people voted, but I only see the answer to question number 2, the three categories. Can anybody help?
Yes. Hey, Adam.
Anyone jumping on?
Adam?
Yes, thank you.
You can hear me?
So, yes, I can. I do not see in my little box.
There should be a close button on your polls.
Oh, and then I'll see it. Thank you. Okay, I have closed the poll. Um,
You'll
so
also,
how many children adopted each year? Did people answer?
yes, you'll need to click on the results.
Now you'll need to click on the results to show
Uh,
that.
I'm sorry, I do not see a
Say
results
poll.
button. I see a launch button.
Right below it, there should
Right
be
below it in the polls section.
Okay, everyone, I am challenged here. No, I do not see it.
Just move on.
I really don't.
It's all right. Just go ahead and move on. We'll see if we can figure that part out.
Well, I'm going to tell you. I will tell everyone the answers. Um,
I'm going to mute you.
okay, let's. Okay, so how many children? And this is an exercise that is designed for two reasons. One, do we know? And I will prejudice the results here. You may all get it right. But in most circumstances, including social workers, whatever, most people get most of them wrong. And that's not to embarrass anyone. It's to say we really haven't had the public conversation very well. But it's also designed to, and you will see this, to direct our thinking to why do we need those services? Why do we need to change the paradigm? Why is there an NCAP to change policy and practice? So I'm going to try to keep the focus on that. So first, because it's a lot of children. It's about 125,000 children every year. That number has declined some because of the drop in numbers of international adoptions. I think I saw that most of you had that one right, the second one. By far, the most adoptions each year, about 50,000, are from foster care. So all those people say, why are people going abroad to get children when there are so many who need homes right here? Well, most people are staying right here. And I'm not sure why it's anybody's business how somebody has children. But anyway, but that is exactly what's happening. It's mostly from foster care. And if that little niche in society is roughly 100 million people. And that's adoption. That's not foster care. That doesn't include birth parents. It doesn't include the social workers who work with these folks. We are talking about a huge proportion of the people in our country have some connection to the work that we do. And so when we have this discussion, we have to get across that we have to change the conversation. This is about a lot of people. You think grandma has something to do with it in a adoption or in a foster family? So we are thinking too narrowly, we are arguing too narrowly, and if we really want to change things, I think we have to expand how we talk about them. So the context for today's discussion, and this is important, this is our starting point. So adoption in America began, formal adoption, in communities of color. Grandma took care of the baby, aunt took care of the baby. But formal adoption in America meant white babies born to white unwed mothers, parented by white married couples of a certain age, by the way. And the paradigm, the model that we built, is started there, because we didn't have, adoptions from foster care. We didn't have. That's what it was about. And the way that we think about the process, child welfare in general, grew from there. And I would put it to us, and I'll go through this in the next hour, that's the problem. That everything changed, but we did not sufficiently anyway. So there were secrets. I'm not going to read these slides to you. Things started changing radically with acceptance of single motherhood and other factors, and the number of white infants plummeted. And meanwhile, world events filled the gap. When the Soviet Union dissolved, no one thought, oh, an adoption event. Well, guess what? It was. When China imposed a one-child policy, no one thought, oh, an adoption event. Well, it was. And it started changing, and at roughly the same time period, under Clinton, the paradigm in foster care shifted to best interest of child as defined by permanency. And there was also ASFA and other legislative changes, incentives to the states. But the bottom line was that the type of baby available, the type of child available for adoption started to change radically. So what has changed? Some of you are old enough to know what that picture in the upper left-hand corner is. That was a show called Father Knows Best. And back then, in the 50s and into the 60s, if the only people of color on television were not there. This was America. And it to say that things have changed is to understate the case. And so in our realm, again, using adoption as the focus, because these changes are not just informal adoption, but this is where the biggest changes can be observed, can be explained. So I'm not going to go through all this separately for you, but please take a look as I'm talking. What happened was a huge shift in practice from secrecy, right, and stigma, which there's plenty of still today, to greater openness, understanding that contact is a good thing, that knowledge about yourself is a good thing. You know, adoptees who used to go back to their agencies, as adults, and say, I want to meet my birth mother, were asked, oh, is something wrong? Do you need some help? So we've come a ways. Because what we were doing then, very clearly, was trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. We were saying there's one right way to have a family, that's making babies, and so we're going to pretend that everybody is doing that, irrespective of how they're really forming their families. So we did a lot of denial. We matched for intelligence. How do you match a baby's intelligence? Anyway, that's what we did, and we have come a long ways. We're not there yet by any stretch of the imagination, but we have come a long ways in those regards. So where are we today? Today, fewer than 1% of single women, and that's white, black, every color, voluntarily place their children for adoption. Most become their parents. The paradigm today is still child placement. You know, when you look at the numbers, they say, what are the counts? Those counts I gave you in those initial slides. It's how many. And for those of you who are in practice of placement, you know, what question do the pre-adoptive parents have? They only have one. When? It's about placement. So as a result of this paradigm remaining that, so many educational opportunities that are there, trainings that are there, supports, other post-adoption services, aren't utilized to the extent that they should be. And almost always, not always, they are add-ons. So some of you are in states where during tough financial times, what supports there were get cut back, because that's what you can do with add-ons. You can cut them back, or they aren't available, or they haven't been developed sufficiently. So the fact that they are separate from the process as we know it, I would argue, is a problem and something that we need to address. And we'll go and jump to the last red on this slide. The population, so we have the paradigm that hasn't sufficiently changed, but what we have is a population that has radically changed, right? Most children being adopted are not white infants. Most of them are from foster care, or from institutions abroad. And meanwhile, their parents are not those white married people of yesteryear, right? They're foster, guardian, kin. You can read all of these. They're straight and gay, come in all colors. We're not talking, this is not a discussion about what's right and wrong and should we or shouldn't we. This is the reality on the ground. This is what everyone faces every day. So what do the families look like? The children being adopted don't look like they used to. And I run down, again, I'm not going to read them all, but take a look. The population has changed radically. There are a lot of kids of color. It's not white babies. It's mostly, in fact, not babies at all. And the parents have changed enormously. And again, in red at the bottom, it's so important, I think, for us to reshape our thinking about who we serve, because the numbers don't tell the tale if we think it's only about, because they revert to the placement model in our heads. And in fact, it really, really is tens of millions of people who are impacted in a serious personal way. So what does that translate into? This is the pie chart. It's a little aged, so the number of inter-country adoptions have fallen. The number of infants has pretty much stayed static, and the child welfare adoptions, excuse me, as a proportion have gone up some. But you can do the math and see how fundamental that change is. So some bottom lines. There's greater openness and honesty. That's a really good thing. But do we know what to do about it? Or is the paradigm, the model, built for this? Because it was built for closed adoptions, right? And secrecy still, or privacy, still is very much a part of adoptions from foster care and lots of other things. So have we sufficiently prepared to deal with the changes that have occurred? Lots of changes, sociological changes. Anybody who's read my book knows what I'm talking about. People growing up today do not have the same views of family. They don't. They think families look like a lot of different things, and adoption has contributed mightily to that social change, but that's a subject for another day. Excuse me. The fundamental to this discussion is that third bullet point, why we need to change the paradigm. Let's go back to, again, an important talking point, because what I'm about to say can be stigmatizing or can be read as stigmatizing and problematic, because people say, oh, those adopted kids, they got problems. Those adopted kids are overrepresented in clinical setting. Those yes, because we're trying to help them. And the problems most of the time, almost all the time, that we are encountering during the adoption or after the placement have to do with what happened before, have to do with the trauma, have to do with maltreatment that occurred before. And that is not something that's widely understood or at least incorporated into people's thinking. So let's look at that pie chart again. So when I said that the population of children has radically changed, what does that mean? How radically? So we think back to that one of those first slides when I talked about how many, about what adoption began as, right? Let's do these numbers. So most of the adoptions from intercountry adoptions are not of white children. They're disproportionately not white children from child welfare, and a growing number of infant placements are not white children. But more to the point, if you add up the 68 and the 15 and you get 83, what it tells us is, and without stigmatizing, is that today's population of children, 83% at some level, in some way, were abused, neglected, or institutionalized. And of the remaining 17%, they ain't all white babies born to white unwed mothers being parented by white married people. In other words, there are so many factors, not just special needs, but transracial adoption, gay and lesbian adoption. There are issues that we need to address to help the families be successful, even within that 17%, in that small minority that used to be the majority. So we're easily talking about 90% of families that are not, quote, traditional, and that would benefit or really might benefit from having services, supports, education, training, and so forth. 90%. I would submit that we are not ready for that, that we have not built a system that that addresses that this new reality. So the population of children has changed, the population of parents has changed, and most laws, policies, and practices in place today were created for a world that no longer exists. And that's the premise. What I'm going to do through the rest of this presentation, to the extent that we have time, and let me see if there are questions, because I'm happy to go at them if there are. Please do ask questions. I'm happy to. We do not have to wait till the end. There are good stopping off points where I can address them if you want. So all of that is changing, and that it's radical enough. And again, I argue that we simply haven't met this reality yet, and we haven't even factored in the internet. So let me ask. I'm going to do another little poll. Let's see if I can figure this one out. So just for a sec, real quick, I'm betting I know the answer to this question. How many? Let me launch it. How much of an impact is the internet having on adoption from your experience? A minor, a medium, or major effect? I think this is about as easy as it's going to get, right? We're almost done. Okay, I'm going to close in just a second because I think I can see the pattern pretty readily.
Adam, it's Nicole. I've jumped back on here for a sec to give you some technical support.
Sure.
Okay, so
Yeah.
once you
I'm
decide,
going to close it in a second.
you're gonna close it.
Yeah.
And then in the drop-down box that you see below that, you're gonna want to find your question and just highlight it, and it'll show you. You're gonna click share.
That's how you do it. Okay.
Excellent. All right, I'm gonna sign back off again.
Okay, so I highlighted it and share. Now it works. Okay, so 91% of you said it's having a major impact. You bet. And this one we see coming. I'm not sure we can deal with it as fast as it's coming, but we see it, and 9% said medium. I think that the 9% will soon be overwhelmed. I really do believe that. So we're going to talk a little about that. So one other question in this regard. Click and choose another poll.
And Adam, you're going to want to click on hide that one so you can go back to your...
I see. Thank you.
Welcome.
I'm not well trained enough. And
you're doing great.
Okay. And would you be interested in attending a webinar or some other session? And I do, just so people know, please say yes to the webinar, but I do give this as a training as well. So if anyone's interested. But in any case, so would you be interested in attending a webinar if we added one maybe after on this subject, adoption on the internet and its impact? Launch. Very interested, somewhat interested, not interested, and that's okay. I'm assuming the not interested are from that 9%, but I don't know that. Okay, this is coming up very quickly. Okay, I'm going to close it because the pattern is extremely clear. Close. I'm going to be a computer tech in my next career. Okay, share. I think I did it. So for those of you who can see, it's roughly 3 to 1. 75% would be interested. And I do think whether people want to attend another webinar or not, the impact of and I'm going to just talk about it for a minute, is just so huge. And if you overlay it on top of all the things that I just talked about, I think we can agree that we have a lot of work to do. The changes are profound, they're historic, they're all those big words, and I don't know why that just happened, sorry. And anyway, and we have a lot of learning to do to keep up with it. And I think, again, to be a broken record on it, I think that the more quickly we move to a paradigm of helping families succeed, the closer we'll get to getting all these things right, because we simply, otherwise, we're just adding pieces onto what we already do instead of restructuring what we do and the institution that we do it in. So this is a whole presentation itself. The best work around this subject is 2 papers that I launched while I was with the Donaldson Institute, Untangling the Web 1 and 2. Those are to the Institute's great credit. It still offers all that work, all of its work for free download from its website. So I do urge you to take a look at it, but I'll look at it briefly. So how profound is the Internet's impact? Here's another opportunity for you to smile. Obviously, it's huge. Keeping secrets is going to be very, very much harder. From the research, it is very much the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, there's something I do keep shifting it inadvertently. I apologize. Okay. Sorry. Okay. I locked myself out of my own keyboard. The good, the bad, and mainly the unknown. There's lots of ugly out there too, by the way. We're a growing commodification of adoption, for sure. The ads are extraordinary out there, both for trying to lure pregnant women and to lure pre-adoptive parents. It's really about commodities. Finding birth relatives is becoming so much easier than it's ever been. You all probably know that. but that has huge institutional and personal implications. I'll talk a little about that. A growing number of minors, there are 12-year-olds who have relationships with their birth families or siblings, and mom and dad don't know it. This is not saying that that those kids and those families should not have contact. It's saying there's no counseling, there's no knowledge, there's no guidance, and that can't be a good thing. It's been a very good thing for many kids who need homes who have special needs, and it's been a very good thing for people who want education, networking. Now, we don't always know what's what and what's good and what's bad, but there's a lot out there. So there are big questions and profound consequences as a result of these changes. First, on practice, and I'm guessing most of you who are in the practice realm. What is the impact on ethical professionals and on children when internet providers promise babies quickly and incentives to pregnant women? What I mean, quick examples. If you go on the internet, you will find they're not agencies, they're entities, they're things who promise that they'll get you a baby in 6 to 8 months, 6 to 12 months, whatever it is. Well, that's interesting. Either they have some supply of babies that we all don't know about, or they're saying something they can't deliver on. Either way, it's a problem. And it's a problem for agencies that are competing with them, so forgive the language, because they're trying to stay afloat. And it's certainly a problem for kids in foster care with special needs and other children in the long term, because, a lot of people are going to go there if they see the promise of that baby. I don't know if that baby is there or not, but there's no monitoring, there's no regulation, so nobody knows. And there are ads on the internet, literally, really, come, pregnant woman, are you pregnant? Don't know what to do? Come to California. We'll give you a lovely place to live. We'll give you a tour of the homes of the stars. You'll have a swimming pool. You'll have months of living life as you wish you could live it. And what it doesn't say is, and all you got to do is give us your baby. But that's all out there, and that has massive implications. On search and reunions, yes, there is more and more search and reunion, and it's easier and easier, but what does that mean for professionals? Can you promise your client, that pregnant woman, or that pre-adopted couple, oh, you could have a closed adoption? I'm not so sure. I don't think so. How do you deal with your kids? What guidance, support, etc. In law and policy, I'll make again by specific example, because this one's real. I'll make it brief. I was speaking at a conference, foster care conference in Connecticut. A couple stands up, says they adopted their daughter, who I think then was 12 or 13. This is a couple years ago. They adopted her. She'd been pretty severely abused by her birth father, but she was healing. She was doing really great. She was going to school, on and on. The 2-3 weeks before that conference, she went online, Facebook, and went on, and she saw, hi, baby, it's daddy. And she's a wreck. And so have we, in law and policy, do judges who are determining visitation, determining everything, take this into account? Do we, and on and on. So what it means at the bottom line, I think, is the traditional practice, placement and beyond, is at risk. Certainly these places are not offering post-adoption services. Closed adoptions are nearing an end. I think, and it's another subject for an ethics discussion, but I think it could be unethical to promise a closed adoption in today's world, because you can't know that you can it can happen. And what I call the extended family of adoption, meaning birth family, adoptive family, kin, our kin, and that's coming fast because that contact is going to be real, and we have to change what we do to accommodate that reality. So the major paper on this subject, the major research is correlated in this paper that we did at the Adoption Institute. Susan Smith was the lead author of it, and I will say with a deep bow that Pam at Harmony was the initial funder. She made it possible. I remember when she and I hatched it. And so, again, just a quick summary, because this is what led me to start thinking about, are we doing enough? Are we thinking about this the right way in the, quote, post-adoption services, and even writ large with before, during, and after? Are we thinking about it properly? So the challenges are utilization of clinical services by adoptive family is indeed higher. So people aren't wrong when they say, you know, all these kids are overrepresented. They sure are. And this illustrates the point that I was making before, right? Because we are dealing with a different population of children. If they weren't getting services, would we be doing if they weren't overrepresented, that means we would not be trying to help them. I really think we need to, again, in language and thinking, we need to respin that. It's not, oh my God, they're overrepresented. It's, isn't that great? We're helping a lot of kids. We got to help even more of them. And you see the rest of the challenges right there. Principal findings. I'm not going to read all these to you. The point of it is that we need help. We need clinical services. We need to deal with the issues and dynamics, which very often people don't understand. And again, if we're thinking about it as child placement, of course we don't. Because we're not, the training we're giving parents, the training we're giving professionals isn't congruent with the reality of the kids and the population that we have today. Quickly jumping just for a study that I helped author, also at the Donaldson Institute, which again I'll breeze through it because all it does is try to make the point that we're talking about for this purpose, that we're talking about to whatever extent there are children coming in from other countries, they're very different than the children who were adopted just a short decade ago, and even less. So what's happening today is more the children are being institutionalized for longer periods abroad, and therefore when they do, they are older when they are coming into this country. And in most countries, there are no children available for adoption overseas who do not have special needs. So they are institutionalized longer, so their special needs can grow. They're older. They're with sibling groups and so forth. I'll let you just look at those others, but I'm not going to go through them. Research on transracial adoption. Again, I'm putting this into this slide set not because adopted people who were transracially adopted or being raised by families other than ones of their own race or ethnicity. This is not a discussion about whether it's right or wrong or anything like that. It is to say that white parents who are raising children of color probably could use some training. I think we might agree on that. So again, institutionally, we don't do that. There are programs that do that. There are places that do that. There have been, historically laws that impede it. But the consequences are very real, and you can look at some of the red. Most transracial adoptees considered themselves to be white or wanted to be white as children. They want to look like their parents, or they can't look in the mirror because that's not what they want to be, because they have not lived as people who are comfortable within their own skin. I'll let you. So again, this is not at all intended to be stigmatizing. It's to say there are issues we need to address, and we're not doing it sufficiently well. I'm not going to go through these. It's a fascinating study called Beyond Culture Camp, also on the Donaldson site, and it's importance of identity for an adopted person, importance of racial ethnic identity, and these are lived experiences that adult adoptees identify as being most helpful for them to grow up comfortable in their own skins. How am I doing on time here? Racing to get through it. 1:40. Okay, we're okay. I'm going to try to finish this with about 10 minutes left for Q&A. I hope that please have some cues for my A's. So into the future, what do we think is coming based on the evidence, based on research, based on experience? What do we think it's coming? The era of closed adoption almost certainly will come to an end. Whether there are some agencies, some attorneys, some entities out on the internet that promise you'll never meet the person on the other side. they can't know that. And when their kid turns 9, they'll find each other. And it's not just the internet. DNA testing, it's a combination of lots of stuff. And also I think the culture really is changing. The culture really is more accepting. That's not to say that the secrecy and shame have all gone away, because they certainly have not. But the embrace of understanding your past, I think, is becoming very real, and it has been for some time. The extended family of adoption will continue to grow. I think whether it's slow or fast, I don't know, but it's inevitable. We already see it happening in lots of expected and non-expected ways. It's not just the first mothers who find the children they placed. It's also siblings. On some reunion registries, there are more brothers and sisters looking for their brothers and sisters than there are adopted people looking for parents. So I think inevitably this family will grow. The big majority of adoptions already, but going into the future, will not be of infants, not even of very young children. That population is going to grow. We see it happening in foster care. From foster care, the people who need homes the most, the ones we're focusing more and more on, not enough yet, are older youth and beyond. So these numbers are going to keep growing and changing. And even if they didn't, if the snapshot were today, I hope I showed you that it's a population that is radically, historically different than the ones we used to serve, of children and parents. Search and reunion will be routine and expected. I think we're getting there. Again, in terms of institutional change, if we are going to serve our, quote, clients, whoever they are, the breadth of them, this is going to be expected. This is going to be part of the game. Now, hopefully, most of the time, we'll know where they are. So it will not be, the search will not be such a search, and the reunion will not be as big a deal because there will have been contact. And I have to stipulate that there are always going to be complications, and there are always going to be times when we don't want to do this, for safety reasons especially, and this will ebb and flow. We know that. But that child who, the judge just told her, or the adoptive parents were told that, she cannot see her brother because he's in a group home and it's not safe, and she cannot talk to her mother because, she was in a terrible relationship and was abusing drugs or whatever. That kid is going home and getting online and saying hi to both of them. So are we prepared for that institutionally? Have we been, are we getting the right thinking, the right training, the right resources? I think maybe we are not. The internet will continue to enable great and awful practices, and some of them are really awful. If they were all great, we wouldn't have to have the conversation. We'd just say, isn't that wonderful? Why don't we just embrace it? Well, it's not all wonderful, and we're not, and again, there's nobody, no government or private entity that is doing any monitoring or regulation of any of this. And access by adopted people to their own information will certainly grow. States are opening original birth certificates one by one, too slowly, but it's happening. And prospectively, it's going to be less and less of an issue because they're going to be able to get their information with or without an original birth certificate. So what do we do? What do we think that this means, and what direction should we be headed? I think that based on the evidence, based on research, but based most of all on what we see before our very eyes, the future should include supports and services to keep families of origin intact, because if we can do that, in fact, we have less to do at the other end. And that would be really nice if we had less to do at the other end. And we have to minimize temporary or institutional care in our own country and in others, because we really do know how harmful it is. It doesn't mean we eradicate it. People want to toss out foster care. It's fine as soon as you find an alternative, but we have to improve it, and we have to resource it, and we have to give better training and and more resources for the people who serve these folks, meaning most of the people on this call. We have to do those things, but we have to keep the kids in institutional or temporary care less. Kids in institutional care lose IQ points, all sorts of damage, and you all probably know from experience the result of having your fifth home in 3 years. We need effective supports and services to help all children and families, but not just at the beginning and not just post-services when it's time and they suddenly realize it, but throughout the process and developmental cycle. And again, I put it to you that means institutional change and not add-ons, because you can subtract those add-ons. And we need real options counseling for expectant parents. This is mostly for infant adoption. We need real counseling and supports and services, not just for in that realm, but oh my God, we probably need them for mothers who lose their children in foster care. I mean, that the abuse and neglect need to be addressed, and maybe the child needs a new home, but we can't pretend that the problems went away. And if it is to be a new world in which there's more openness, more contact, and so forth, it's even more important that we help everyone involved, because they're going to have relationships. They're going to know each other. And if we don't help them, those relationships aren't going to be healthy. So how do we get there? We have to educate parents, because right now, for all the disproportionate representation of children in clinical settings, not enough parents are taking their kids to get the help they need because they think it's a weakness. I can't do it. So part of this institutional change, I think, has to be all about help seeking as a strength from the get-go, from the first educational session and training onward. And no, they don't want to hear it at that point, but they need to hear it at that point, and they need to know that the panoply of services and supports and education is available whenever they need it, and not so they have to scrounge to find it. We all, I think, need to learn and teach about the impact of the internet, social media. I think that that argument is made. At least I hope it is. And the bottom line is that we need to reshape child welfare policy and practices into a different paradigm. The one that I've been discussing with you today, where the ultimate goal is not child placement. That's a start, a necessary start, again, whether that child is replaced into original family or placed into a new one. It is our responsibility to help those families. You know, forever our mantra in our field, again writ large, has been that every child deserves to have a safe, loving, and permanent family. It's great, and it's true. But how many, given the changed population, again, the changed population of people who we serve, how many of those families do you know who are safe, who are permanent, who are loving, and where life is one hell of a challenge every single day? Have we really done our jobs for those children or for those families? I think we need to do something very different in order to succeed in that quest. So when I finished writing Adoption Nation, the first edition, years ago, I thought, how do I get across this notion I had to write the introduction to the book. How do I get across in a short form that something big and radical and important is changing around us, a revolution? And you haven't noticed. It's an audacious thing to suggest, and I had a lot of problem writing it. It started turning into another chapter, and my editor said, no, you're not doing that. The book is done. And then a miracle occurred. A cartoon popped into my head. Never happened before, never happened since, and I can't draw. So I had an artist, draw it for me, and it's the introduction of my book, and I'll explain why I'm closing with it in a second. It's a pregnant woman at a party, and the couple is saying to her, oh, I'm sorry, you couldn't adopt? And now I'm guessing a few of you are chuckling. And the reason that I use that as an introduction, and I'll explain what the relevance here, is that X number of years ago, well, first of all, it's funny, I think, because it turns reality on its head. Those of you who are adopted parents, how many times can we hear, oh, I'm sorry you couldn't have any real children? Well, you know, my kids look real. They run around, they do the things real people do. Anyway, so it turns reality on its head. But also, I think a relatively short number of years ago, historically speaking, people would have looked at this and said, what are you talking about? You think we shouldn't make babies? We can laugh at this today. We can get it because something fundamental changed in the world of adoption. We changed the paradigm. We changed social thought. We changed so much that people can laugh at this. And my contention is if we were able to take that old institution, closed, buried people, stigmatized people, shamed people, and made it into, and got as far as we have today, real progress in real ways, if we could do that, last sentence, we can do this. It is in our interest, and it is certainly in the interest of the people we serve to do this, to change this paradigm, to make this change, to move policy and practice to a point where we're really helping those children and families. So thank you all very much for listening, and I do hope to see you at the ASAP conference. And we have a few minutes for questions. Hello, moderator?
I'm right here. Sorry about that. It's wonderful
Hello?
what happens, Adam.
Oh, there.
I am here. It's amazing what happens when you mute and unmute. So one of our first questions is from Sarah Bobo, and she asks, how do you think post-adoption services should be funded so it is not an add-on service but an integral part of adoption?
Okay, there are a few answers to that question. I'll try to keep it brief. I mean, this is very much what NCAP is going to try to accomplish. I don't think we can do this tomorrow morning. We need people advocating for change policies, practices, funding, resources. But I think for any agency, if you change the mission, and it can be formal or informal, but if in-house you know that what your goal is, your endpoint, is enabling families, it changes the way you look at your budget, your own budget, however much you've got. It changes the way you allocate your staff, or could, because you may do it perfectly today. But it should make you rethink how you resource what you allot the resources you already have. What's most important? What are the goals? Because if we're going to be creating a lot of families that are rehoming or putting their kids on airplanes, we are not doing our jobs just because we use the money to have our workers do another home study. So I think some of it must be internal. We have to start talking the talk. We have to talk, when we talk to our legislators, we have to say it. When we talk to our staffs, we have to say it. When we look at our budgets, we have to say it. I am not pretending for a moment that it will be easy. Again, NCAP, I'm not trying to sell anything here. You know, NCAP is here to help if somebody wants it. But internally, we have to start thinking differently, understanding all these puzzle pieces that I try to put together. And externally, we have to communicate it differently when we talk. Because when we talk now, we still do what I was saying, you know, every child deserves a safe, add successful. And when people say, well, what does that mean? The answer is, finally we're asking the right question. Because we need to be asking the question of what is a successful family and how do we do it. And then we're actually walking on the right road. Not a great answer. It's why NCAP exists, but it's a start.
All right. Quickly, because I know we've got maybe about 3 or 4 minutes left. Cindy, and I hope I don't butcher your last name, Montejo, perhaps, asked if you know off the top of your head, Adam, I'm not sure, maybe you have these statistics, but the number of adoptions of non-infants that fail. You know, we talk about knowing, you know, we all kind of know some of the reasons why that happens with older children. But how often are those adoptions failing? And I'm not sure, that may be something that we need to get back to folks, unless you know.
Well, I can answer the question. The numbers are all over the lot. Those numbers are not captured routinely. We don't know, to a large extent, the answer is we don't know. Starting, I think, last year, maybe the year before, the Children's Bureau of HHS started actually capturing that data in AFGARS, and it's in the data that it captures from the states, but it has historically not been captured. I've seen numbers that run anywhere from 3 to 10%, which is, I would argue, fairly small, but I want to answer the import of the question. There are those families, and those are the ones we can point to most succinctly and say, see, we're not doing enough. But the numbers are way bigger, and that's the point. Most parents do not allow the family to break up even when times are really rough, when, you know, the furniture is being burned. They stick with it. And those are so there's some real number, and I don't want to be too literal. There's some real number, and it's much higher, of people whose families are struggling every day. And that's the number we can't identify, but that we have to focus on.
All right. And one of the last, yep, I think we have time for one more. There was also a question about whether the PowerPoint that you've done can be made available, which I know you
yes,
addressed
absolutely.
it right at the beginning. So those of you who are interested in receiving that, please feel free to zip me, Nicole Conning, an email. That email address is nicole@harmonyfamilycenter.org. If you've been to the conference registration site, you can also find my email address and or phone number there. Hey, thanks, Adam.
Yep.
And then the last question is from Teresa, and she asks, what resources are available to identify what best practice post-adoption services should actually look like?
Well, the best thing that's out there right now, again, I'm going to point to my old Habitat Donaldson Institute. There's the report called Keeping the Promise, which is very good and still probably the best compendium of best practices of information knowledge to date. And there also is another, I don't remember off the top of my head, but there was, we also published a subsequent follow-up paper that also talked about best practices, and that's on the website as well. So if I may, I'd like to end, and then you can close for the Harmony. I just want to thank everyone for coming. I want to please urge everyone to take a look at our website, National Center on Adoption and Permanency. I think there's lots of stuff there that will be useful, and my contact information is there as well as right here, and my colleagues, my 24 colleagues and I would be delighted to work with anybody who wants to travel this path with us. So
wonderful. Adam, thank you so much. And I'm sorry that I will collectively, myself on behalf of everybody, will give you a round of applause and thank you for an hour well spent, such great information. And again, for those of you who would like the PowerPoint presentation, chock full of some great information that Adam has thoughtfully put together, please let me know. And also thank you for joining us. We are excited about being able to offer the pre-conference webinars. I also would invite you, if you haven't already, one, please register for, we've got 4 more webinars coming up. Next Wednesday is an overview of Pennsylvania's statewide model of post-permanency services. That will be presented by Brenda Lawrence and Pam Wagner of Family Design Resources. They will also be conducting a workshop at the conference, so please do register for that. It will be from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Lastly, if you haven't done so already, please consider joining us at the conference the end of May, first couple days of June. We would love to have you. And with that, I hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Take care.
Bye-bye.